Are you a person who is an absolute perfectionist in work or personal life? And then you set yourself a very high standard, and then when you don't achieve it, you beat yourself up and get frustrated. Well, if you're looking for that kind of a perfectionism, it is not bad that you have it. But in this video, I'm going to talk about certain points where perfectionism is something which develops your career and something which ruins your career. Hi, my name is Shaunak and I work with CTPD, that is Center for Training and Professional Development. And in this video, I'm going to talk about what is perfectionism all about. Now, when we talk of perfectionism, can you tell me what exactly it is? You can go through internet articles, research papers. It is about self-control, an irrational, impractical self-control that you pose on yourself, and then you set up a very high standard, and then when you don't achieve it, you beat yourself up and you get frustrated. So the thing is that being a perfectionist is not bad, but there is something other than being a perfectionist, which is called maladaptiveness. Generally, perfectionism is termed as maladaptiveness, where you have a extremely, I would say, big kind of a deep self-criticism, and this self-criticism leads to maladaptiveness. Rather, let us focus on today on a point which is called adaptive behavior or adaptive perfectionism, which basically leads to more growth. Now, when I talk of growth, there are 4 points which I would like to talk about, and this adaptive behavior or this perfectionism won't cause any damage. The first point is what is called focus on growth. Now, for example, let me cite an example. You can be an athlete, you can be a great student who is constantly focusing on this level of standard. I would achieve 100 out of 100. The problem is that you always try to control a world which is highly uncontrollable. There are external factors, your personal health, and a lot of factors which will never make you achieve 100 out of 100. Classic example would be athletes who start their career with setting high standard, and then when they don't achieve it, they burn out. Rather, let us focus on growth. Now, what do I mean by growth is that when you're starting your journey or doing a perfect activity, achieving perfectionism, you see how much growth you have achieved. You started from 0, now you are at 30%, 40%, or maybe 50%. So rather than beating yourself up and getting into something which is called an irrational control, a maladaptive feature, let us focus on growth and you evaluate yourself how much you have grown. So it is always better that you evaluate your growth and see how much you have really grown rather than fixing up something which is very impractical. So second point which obviously comes is that evaluate your intent. When I talk of evaluating your intent, try to find out why you're doing this thing. Why maybe you're a swimmer, an athlete, an astronomer, a teacher, you are even into learning and development. Why you are doing this thing? What is the intent? Is the intent is up to setting a standard which is extraordinary, or is the intent basically to enjoy the course of the journey? So try to evaluate the intent and get again into flexible, adaptive mode rather than something which is very irrational. The third point which comes is that re-evaluate your standards. Now look around your office, there are people you always fear and you give something which is called maximizers. You know what is a maximizer? Maximizer is always the, if I don't deliver this presentation, I'm going to get fired. If I don't do this, then I'm going to, my career would be ruined. But that is really not. Look around people around your office. Do they get fired? How boss behaves with them? How the management behaves with them? You will find the world is a nice place to live. It is you, your irrational setting of standards have made yourself think that if you don't do that, then you are getting into a problem. So that is the third point. Re-evaluate your standards. Once you re-evaluate yourself, you will see that really you don't need to do don't need to go up to that standard. So, for example, a person or a student who achieves, they talk to me that I want to achieve 100 out of 100, and they get frustrated in maths and physics failing up to that standard. Rather, I would suggest set up to 70% for the first time and then go up to 80%. So you see, you're re-evaluating your standard and you're focusing on growth. The last point would expose yourself to imperfectionism. I would say imperfection behavior, because what happens is that the psychological studies and the doctors tell that whatever you fear, if you encounter yourself more and more, then the fear goes out. So without reading an email 27 times, just click on send. without knowing something, speak on to that. So what will happen is that once you expose yourself to something which is imperfectionism, you will see that the world is not that bad place which you think. One important point which comes to my mind is that when you are posing yourself to an absolute perfectionist, remember, it is not that only your work or work culture, but because it is also the relationship which hampers. Now, if I set a standard which is up to my mark, and if you don't deliver, I encounter into kind of a conflict. I encounter into kind of a bad relationship, and there's a lot of enmity. So again, to repeat and just summarize today's discussion, instead of doing something which is maladaptive, instead of setting an irrational, impractical standard and calling yourself as a perfectionist, number one, focus on growth, see how you're progressing. Number two, evaluate your intent, see how and why you're doing this. Third, reevaluate your standard and see whatever the standard you have set is practical, and you only need to grow up to that. And last would be basically exposing yourself to imperfectionism, and then you get adapted to that culture. I hope that this talk has been something fruitful to you. Now, when I talked about the last point that you enter into enmity and conflict, what I was talking is about conflict resolution. That is the next part of our video. Thank you for watching it.